I was in high school when the O.J. Simpson verdict was read. I remember that all of our classes stopped and we all turned our TVs on to hear what the verdict was going to be. Later that day, I remember one of my teachers, who apparently believed that O.J. was actually guilty, said something to the effect of, well, he's going to have to live with what he's done, and that should be punishment enough. I'm sure that my teacher was saying this to try to comfort himself, but I want to talk about how many of us assume that all of us have some level of decency and some capacity for remorse, and that surely somebody that did something as awful as what OJ was accused of doing has got to feel a little bit bad about it, right? There are many, many pathological narcissists in the world that have done even worse than what he was accused of, and they sleep just fine. Welcome to Looking Behind the Mirror, where we explore narcissism and take our lives back as we make sense out of nonsense. As a quick disclaimer, everything I say is based on my opinions and my personal experiences. I'm not a professional, and if you're really struggling, I encourage you to seek professional help. I am providing links below for you. In this video, I'm first going to talk a little bit about why we believe that everybody has at least a little bit of a conscience. And then I also want to give some examples and some analogies to help you understand the extreme lack of remorse and the ways in which narcissists rationalize what they do and avoid feeling any feelings of guilt. The most simple reason that we assume that everybody is going to feel some sort of remorse for doing terrible things is projection. For many of the people watching this video, I'll bet that if you just made a dumb remark to somebody at a party and hurt their feelings a little bit, you'd probably feel really remorseful. You'd probably feel really bad about that. And it's really hard to conceive of somebody that has no limit, somebody that might even be able to do what O.J. Simpson is accused of doing and not feel bad about that. How can we have people that lose sleep over a comment they made that hurt someone's feelings, and people that can do such egregious, cruel, horrible acts and they sleep just fine? It just doesn't compute for those of us that have normal amounts of empathy and normal capacity for remorse. I'll bet that my school teacher that made that remark couldn't even conceive of the type of person that could do what many of us believe OJ did and not feel bad about it, not be haunted by it, in fact. My teacher actually was telling himself that the remorse itself would be punishment enough. Learning about these kinds of people can be really horrifying because most of us spend our whole lives projecting our own amount of guilt and remorse and decency and empathy onto other people. We assume that everybody is at least a little bit like we are until we're confronted with the horror of people that really have no limits. Which leads into another reason that we have to wonder how narcissists can sleep at night. And that's just because it's too horrifying and disturbing and offensive and even frightening to think that there are people walking around that sleep just fine after doing such horrific things. People don't want to believe that. People want to believe that everybody is capable of redemption, that everybody is capable of remorse, that everyone's actually really good somewhere deep down if they can just access that part of themselves. It's like the Grinch who stole Christmas. You know, at the end, he finally has this epiphany and turns into this really warm, loving guy. We all want to believe that everybody is capable of that, and that anybody that really, really hurts someone, or even worse, is just going to be bothered by that on some level. We don't want to believe that there are people that can hurt other people, that have no limits to how badly they can hurt others, and to feel absolutely no remorse for it, to not have it bother them one bit. People that absolutely do not care about the pain of others and do not care about the pain that they inflict on others. I think a good example of the inability and the reluctance for some people to believe in this kind of thing is if there's anybody out there listening that maybe has a parent who is exceptionally abusive, narcissistic, so badly that you've had to cut off contact with that person. You've probably had friends and family try to tell you, like, you can't cut off contact with your parent, that's your mom or that's your dad, because they somehow think that there's some intrinsic value in that relationship just because that's your parent, and that of course your parent loves you, of course your parent is going to miss you and be deeply hurt by you cutting off contact. The kind of people that would pressure you into keeping in touch with an abusive parent are the kind of people that just refuse to believe that somebody could be so cold that they would live to hurt their own child, that they would care so little about their own child's feelings that they would sleep just fine after tormenting and abusing and hurting their child, until their child decides to cut off the relationship. People don't want to believe that people like that exist. They have to hold on to the idea that surely there's some redemption possible, and surely it must be your responsibility to keep in touch with your own parent, to give them a chance to give you that great apology that they must surely want to give you, right? Well, unfortunately, monsters do exist, and there are many, many people, as I said in the beginning of this video, that absolutely do not care about the pain of others, and they sleep just fine after having done horrible things. So let's talk about that a little bit. I think there are two main components to why some people operate this way, and that is their extreme entitlement and their justification. They feel extremely entitled to do the things they've done, no matter how awful those things are. And they justify, like they tell themselves, well, I needed to do that because I had no choice for whatever reason. And they really believe that and they hold on to it. You can't really feel too remorseful for something you felt like you had an absolute right to do, and you also believe that you really didn't have any other choice. To help you put yourself in the shoes of a pathological narcissist that justifies the way they behave this way, I've come up with a couple different examples of things that a narcissist might do to somebody else and how they look at it. So for my first example, imagine that a narcissist somehow convinces you to cut off a relationship with someone really close to you, maybe a sibling, a parent, a really good friend, and then after you've cut off contact with that person, something terrible happens and they pass away. A narcissist isn't going to lose any sleep over something like this. They are still going to continue to feel stubbornly justified and entitled to what they've done. So I think a good example of how a narcissist would feel in this type of a scenario would be to imagine if you had a loved one that you really cared for, and imagine that this is somebody that got themselves into a very abusive relationship. Perhaps many of the people watching this video have actually been in this situation, so it might not be that hard for you to relate. But imagine that you're watching somebody that you really love and care for dealing with somebody that's really hurting them, affecting their mental health, taking advantage of them, exploiting them, maybe even putting them in danger. And you encourage them and support them in cutting this relationship off. And imagine that your loved one finally gets the courage to cut off the relationship and walk away. And then imagine a little bit later, this abusive person, for whatever reason, passes away. If you can imagine yourself in that kind of a scenario, I think many of us would still feel very justified in having encouraged and supported somebody in cutting off an abusive relationship like that, even if the abuser passed away. We wouldn't really second guess ourselves too much. Well, a narcissist that has maybe pressured somebody to cut off a relationship and had it end this way is going to feel even more justified than you would feel in the scenario that I just laid out. A narcissist is going to feel even more conviction, even more righteousness, even though maybe they pressured not encouraged, but pressured somebody to cut off a relationship with somebody that was probably a really healthy influence. I mean, everything's backwards and flipped around, but that's pretty much how a narcissist's world operates. Everything's backwards and upside down. So if you can imagine that level of justification and then raise it even higher, that's how little remorse a narcissist is going to feel. But I hope it kind of helps you put yourself in the shoes of somebody that can do something like this and feel no remorse. My next example, let's imagine that you're married to a narcissist and you're trying really, really hard to please this person. And of course, nothing you do is ever good enough. You're running yourself into the ground, using all your time and energy trying to make this person happy. And then one day you find out that this narcissist has been cheating on you, and then they decide to leave you. And then you go through this horrible, nasty divorce where they try to take your house away from you, try to take, if you have kids, try to take the kids. And then they start telling your friends and family all these lies about you. And they try to take everything from you. They try to take your children, your reputation, all your friends and family, all your money, your home, your job. They just go scorched earth on you. And this is something that a lot of you have probably been through or something similar. It can be really mind-boggling to think of how somebody can do something like this to somebody they once supposedly loved and not feel guilty about it, not feel any recognition of how awful they're being, and not to feel any kind of remorse. But in this particular scenario, we've got to take a few steps back and remind ourselves that this is a pathological narcissist. For this pathological narcissist, they didn't see you as somebody that was running themselves into the ground trying to make them happy. They saw you as somebody that was severely disappointing them. The narcissist is always going to feel very disappointed by the people in their lives. Eventually, at some point, the relationships always start off amazing. And then at some point, the narcissist feels deeply, deeply disappointed when they realize that they are with a mortal human being with their own identity. And this deep, deep disappointment is always projected onto the person that's disappointing them as something that person's doing on purpose. Real quick, I hope this goes without saying, but I'm about to go on a little bit of a rant here. And while I was watching this back, I started to get worried that maybe some people wouldn't realize that I'm speaking from the narcissist's delusional perspective. So in this little rant I'm about to go on, I'm speaking as if I'm the narcissist, and I in no way mean the things that I'm saying. So I hope nobody misunderstands that and takes it personally. So in this particular example, if you're the person that this is happening to, are somebody that deeply, deeply disappointed the narcissist on purpose, probably, which is an extreme betrayal. You weren't meeting the narcissist's needs, and that's your fault. That makes you the bad guy. That makes the narcissist an innocent victim. And the narcissist had no choice but to go outside the relationship to find somebody that could meet their needs that you just refused to meet. Obviously, they had no choice in the matter. And then when they finally got their needs met by somebody else, you had the nerve to be upset by it. So in their mind, they trusted you. They believed in you. They thought that you were going to save the world. They perceived that you basically promised them that you were going to make them happy for the rest of all time. And so they committed to you. But it turns out that you tricked them, and now you're going to keep them trapped in this awful relationship, and you're just going to stop trying, and you're never going to listen or think about them or try to do anything nice for them. And so you really deserve to be punished. And of course you deserve to be cheated on and left. And then, well, what do you expect now? Do you expect them to be homeless? Do you expect them to have to pay child support now? Of course they're going to try to get the house. Of course they're going to try to get all the money they can out of you. You're the one that betrayed them. You're the one that ruined the relationship and broke your promises. Of course they're going to try to explain to everybody how awful you are so that everybody can understand what an innocent victim they are and what a terrible thing you've done. This is how they're thinking of it, and this is how they sleep at night. For as much as they have hurt you, they believe that you deserve 10 times more. Narcissism is a pathology. It is extremely disturbing. This is why we talk about it so much. This is why there's such a whole movement of awareness out there right now, because this is how horrifying it is, and this is how badly it can hurt people. For one more example, I'm going to bring it back to the person I talked about in the beginning of the video, and that's O.J. Simpson. I thought a little bit about what he's accused of having done, and I didn't really feel like it was appropriate, or I didn't really feel comfortable coming up with some alternate scenario to try to put yourself in his shoes, because you know, there's certain things that no matter what the circumstances are, there's just no justification for it, at least from our perspective, from the perspective of somebody that has any sense of decency whatsoever. But I think it's really important to recognize, acknowledge, and accept that there are people that are capable of doing the kinds of things that he's accused of doing, and to sleep just fine at night. To understand that in the moment that a crime like that is committed, there is a complete justification and rationalization, that the perpetrator is absolutely convinced that they have every right to do what they're doing. Pathological narcissists that get to that level of hurting people are extremely entitled, off the charts entitled. They feel like they can own people. Not just own people, but that they have a right to own people, and that anybody that would try to assert their autonomy or try to start their own life or even try to defend themselves, somehow committing a crime against them, somehow robbing them of their property. That's how entitled some narcissists feel. And of course, there is an extreme lack of empathy, not just to the victim, but to the countless people left behind that have pain that they have to deal with for the rest of their lives. Narcissists have no empathy for that because they feel so justified in what they've done. They feel like, well, if you didn't want me to do something like that, then you should have just done what you were supposed to do. And it goes back to this feeling of ownership. It's as if somebody was trying to steal their vehicle or something. Like, well, if you didn't want me to do such terrible things, then why were you stealing my vehicle? And of course, there is no remorse and no accountability. And it's really to such an extreme level that some narcissists don't even understand that other people are going to expect to see remorse, accountability, guilt, or even recognition of wrongdoing. And to add to these perspectives, we also need to understand that narcissists interpret reality through their feelings, and that is the only gauge of reality that they trust. However they feel is how they believe reality is, period, and nothing will ever convince them of anything else. And if a narcissist feels like they're entitled to hurt somebody, if they feel like they have a right to do whatever it is they want to do, that is reality. That is the fact. That is the truth. No amount of anybody else's morals, anyone else's opinion, or any law or anything is going to change this fact that their feelings are dictating to them. If a narcissist feels entitled, feels like the innocent victim, feels like they're justified, that's it. That's all they need to be able to sleep just fine at night. And nothing's ever going to come tugging at them or bothering them or giving them second thoughts. And now, if you're in a situation where you're trying to deal with the loss of a narcissistic relationship, and maybe you're still in those beginning stages where you're really struggling with the overwhelming desire to try to communicate with a narcissist, try to get through somehow, just remember that somebody that could do something like what O.J. Simpson is accused of doing and feel justified in that, feel no remorse or guilt, not have it bother them one bit, and never for a second entertain the idea that maybe they shouldn't have done that, not just because of the consequences to them, but maybe that was just a wrong, bad thing to do. For somebody that stubborn, that cold, that devoid of empathy, do you really think that it's worth any of your time to try to convince somebody that perhaps views the world that way, that maybe they shouldn't yell at you, or make you feel bad or call you names. I mean, I haven't really wanted to say out loud what it is OJ's accused of because it is so awful, and I just don't feel like saying it all out loud, but we're talking about things that escalate up to that point. So to think that you're going to get through to somebody and appeal to the conscience of somebody that could potentially get all the way up to that level and still not feel any kind of guilt or remorse is just, I think it's a huge waste of time and energy, and it's really just a huge false hope. It's a toxic kind of hope that you're going to be able to find something in someone that just isn't there. Narcissists have very little empathy for anyone, but they especially have no empathy for people that they treat badly. Once they start treating you badly, it's important to understand that there's something in the relationship that's making them feel like they have a right to do that. As off base and delusional as they might be, it's important to understand that they think that you deserve that. They think that they are in the right to treat you that way. And for you to come along, probably completely unaware of what is going on in their head, and try to tell them that they need to treat you better, all they're able to think is, well, if you want me to treat you better, then you need to just stop being so terrible and awful, because for whatever reason, they have it in their head that you deserve what you're getting, and they feel that you deserve it. And there's absolutely nothing in the world you can do to convince them otherwise, because you're already the bad guy. You're already the one that deserves whatever awful thing that they're doing. So why would they ever believe you if you're trying to tell them something that goes against what they already believe? I hope that you can see really what a huge waste of time it is to try to get through to somebody like this, and that it's important to accept that some people just don't have a conscience in this way. And you can't appeal to a conscience that isn't there. You can't appeal to somebody's empathy if they just don't have any for you. If you're looking for a way to support my channel and you're considering professional therapy, BetterHelp is offering my listeners 10% off their first month if they sign up using the link below in the description. And if you sign up using the link below in my description, I will get a one-time commission for you signing up. So that would be a great way to help me out if that is something that you are interested in. I hope this helps. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment below any ideas you have for me for future videos. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like this video and would like to see more like it in the future. Until next time, thanks. Bye.